Fashion memo. Dear me. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Liam Carrigan and Lawrence Conley, both on different sides of the world, but both wearing the same Celtic top. I must have missed the memo, guys. How you doing?
Fairly relaxed after Brendan Ball returns, you know.
Brendan Ball, is that what we're calling it, Lawrence? Brendan Ball. I'll tell you what. Loads of discussion points. It's raging on, isn't it? And rage is the operative word. We're going to be talking about everything from Champions League group stages, where we are in relation to the transfer window. Are we feeling well enough equipped to go into that group? Obviously, the package has been released by the club. We know how much it's going to cost us to go to the games. Plenty of the Acsom team will be going to the away games. And also, we'll be talking about this incredible scenario, Liam. And it just so happens that we've got Liam and Lawrence who do like a wee chat about officialdom. And it brought to mind a very overused quote, but I'm going to use it anyway. When you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression. Liam Carrigan, they're writing a wee letter of complaint to the SFA because they're no chuffed that VAR got it right.
Well, I'm going to borrow a wee phrase that my American friends like to use. I think we can now say that Rangers are officially the Karens of Scottish football. Every time they don't get their own way, they demand to see the manager. You know, it's just getting beyond a joke. Look, you got beat. Just take it. You know, regroup. I mean, international break now. This is a time when if you've just lost a derby, right, which, you know, we could have been sitting down today to have a similar discussion. Thankfully, we're not, but, you know, we could have. The right thing to do would be to reflect. Where are we going wrong? What do we need to do to sort it out? But instead, it's tantrums, it's papal conspiracies, it's
Did you see that?
Alex Jones levels of paranoia amongst that lot. And it's, well, I mean, I'm loving every second of it. I'm not going to lie, but it really isn't good for them long term. They need to try and actually think about what went wrong for them as a team at the weekend.
No, Liam. They need to continue on the path they're going, Liam. Come on, mate. What are you all about?
The papal conspiracy one absolutely blew me away. We're at the stage sometimes where you've got to check yourself to see, is this real or is it a parody? Is it meant to be ridiculous or do they truly believe this? And I think we're going to start off with this because we'll get out of the way. We've obviously spoken a wee bit about it leading up to today's bulletin. But obviously the refereeing decisions were massive, Lawrence, massive talking point. We've looked at them from every conceivable angle, but, you know, I know what your thoughts are going to be in relation to Lagerbielke and the chopped off goal. But there's one at the time, I turned to James and I said to him at the time, I said, you know, that's a penalty. It was Kyogo getting shoved by the goalie. I think I mentioned it in the post-match. And I probably didn't notice the second push from Goldson. So, you know, Lawrence, if you're going to moan about the display or the performance, rather, of the officials, you've got to take into account that they got away with that one.
Oh, definitely got away with it. I put it in a group chat during the game and said, you know what, that's a pen. The ball's just got up and he's pushed him. Why he's done it, who knows? But the ball's in play. And then, you know, for good measure, Goldson pushes him.
Yeah.
You know, there's an argument could have a penalty. If Maida went down, it looked to be impeded, managed to keep his feet though. Perhaps a penalty for Yang. You know, and Bobby Madden's come out and told him the rules. You've got guys like Neil McCann on TV saying, yes, it's a foul by the rules, but I don't agree with the rules, so the goal should have stood.
It's like, just to add a bit of credibility to it, Lawrence, just to add some weight behind the argument.
By the rules, it's a foul, but I don't agree with them, so it's not off it. Just, come on, mate. Think about what you've said.
Mm-hmm. You know what, though, right? See if they want to push for this, Liam. I'll come to you on this, right? See if Rangers, as a football club, really want to push for reform in terms of Scottish football and the refereeing and the way that we recruit referees and the training of referees and the culture within that group. If they want to go for reform, I'm all for it, Liam. I think go for it, lads. Let's tear it up. Let's start again. Let's get the neutrals into referee or games of football. They should really be careful what they wish for, I think.
Well, you would think after the scalping they got in Europe last week, they would realise the danger of going outside their immediate Scottish circle for officials, because they didn't get any favours over in Holland, and they got a good hiding along with it. Yeah, it's really it's bizarre to me that. I mean, that quote that you come out with at the start of the show just sums it up perfectly. Confusing, equality with oppression, because they've had it their own way for so long, they just cannot handle it. And the utter meltdowns we're seeing from their supporters in the last 48 hours are just another symptom of this entitlement that they've got. Completely misplaced entitlement for a team that's won one league title in their entire history.
Equifax Cup as well. I think it was third or fourth attempt. Can't remember, but
aye, there is that. And
yeah,
have they still got the bike in the trophy room, or did they sell that? I can't remember.
I've still got a version of it. I'm not sure if it's the same one. They'll claim it is. Thanks to everybody for getting involved. I'm not sure we're going to get our usual trolls this week, but Paddy Lavery certainly is not one of those. You're always in there, Paddy, and it's great to see you. Afternoon to you. Is it sunny where you are? Because everybody's telling me it's sunny outside. I haven't even had a chance to go out and check it out. Jungle Line, afternoon to you as well. We are going to be talking about where we are in relation to the squad going into the Champions League. Is there enough quality in there? I think one of the biggest things, obviously we'll talk about the game specifically because you two guys haven't had a chance to speak about it on here at least. The biggest thing for me is we've gone into that transfer window and we've been cash rich, Lawrence, and as football fans, you think to yourself, right, cash in the bank, we get it. We absolutely get that you need to manage the football club and you need to do it in such a way that you're not staring down the barrel of a gun. Now, Celtic have been in that position on two occasions that I'm aware of. One, which is more publicised, obviously saved by Fergus McCann, but another time where we had to completely shift the way that we were working our finances, and that did result in Peter Lawwell coming in and counting the beans, Lawrence, and since then we've been managing it completely differently. But we come out of a transfer window there that we've gone into very strong anyway, money in the bank. We actually have to announce the fact that we're a wee bit richer than we expected to be. And we've made a profit in that transfer window of a net profit of around 14 million, maybe a wee bit more than that. And as a football fan, I'm sitting looking at the squad and I'm watching that game at the weekend thinking, wait, there's just areas of the park that I would have loved a wee bit more quality. And I think back to a wee bit different last pre-season when we do the deals for Carter, Vickers and Jota. The reason I bring that up is because what it cost us about 13 million quid, didn't it? And I think, well, we've got that 14 million pound profit, unexpected profit from the transfer window. Do you think, Lawrence, that we've missed a trick here to bring in that extra bit of quality? Why didn't it happen? Because going into the Champions League with someone of the stature of a Carter, Vickers and Jota, a double whammy on top of everybody else that we brought in, you'd feel a hell of a lot more confident, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I suppose I'm not looking at it in terms of spend, but we know we needed competition for Hart. We know we needed competition for Taylor. We knew that at the end of last season. And we've not done anything about those two positions. We bought a couple of centre-halves in who've looked good. One's now injured. It was unfortunate the kind of injury crisis we have. Have we replaced Jota? Yang looks good. Is he going to do it to the same level as Jota? I don't know. But the worrying thing for me is kind of left back and goalkeeper. We've known for some time we need players in to provide competition. And we've not done anything about it. Regardless of how much money you've got, you're kind of going, at the end of the season, but we need somebody in. Seagrass is running away. He's not really providing competition to Hart.
No.
Taylor's not getting any competition there at left back. And nothing's happened.
No.
And it's not for lack of money. It didn't need to be two £6 million players. We're not saying 6 million keeper, 6 million left back. We're saying bring in people that are going to give them competition and nothing. So it's poor. From that aspect, I think it was a poor transfer window. The guys we've bought in, we've not seen a lot of them, through injury or whatever. So Yang's looked good. Rocky and Lagerbielke, I think both have looked good. Obviously, Rocky's injured. They have. Tilo, we don't know, but Jared tells us he's going to be amazing. Let's hope so. But yeah, saddened that we've not strengthened our goalkeeper and left back.
And Holmes looked good. We'll talk about Holmes, but I think he's also looked good as well, Lawrence. So yeah, we've seen flashes of what the new arrivals can provide. And I also know that you can't just say buy two £6 million players because that guarantees success. We know it doesn't. guarantee success. Absolutely not. And I think the example I used, the Carter Vickers and Jota, again, was a little bit skewed because we knew what we were getting, Liam. We had them for a year at the club, so that succession was much less risky to shell out. I don't think there's a Celtic fan on the planet who wouldn't have shelled out 13 million for those 2 players. So I get all that. I know it's easier to say than get the business done, but it is slightly disappointing. And I don't want to labour that because obviously we had a really good victory against Rangers at the weekend. And I want to talk a wee bit more about some of the performers who came through that game as well. But I think Stephen Sloan's on my wavelength when I'm thinking about, we have a squad of 32 players, which equates to a yearly wage bill of over 30 million quid. What if we had a squad of 25 with the same wage bill but better quality players? I've always kind of thought of that, and I know that a massive part of our strategy, Liam, is to bring in a group of players within an age bracket and within a spend bracket who we can do a Van Dijk on, or we can do even a Jota on, or O'Reilly. I mean, we could have made a massive profit on O'Reilly. Thank God we didn't. But to sell a £1.5 million player for 10 million, that's the strategy.
See, I'm going to offer a wee counter argument to what we've been saying here about bringing in quality players, right? Because Carter Vickers and Jota, as you mentioned, right? Cast your mind back to when we initially signed them on loan, right? Who were they? A Benfica reject and a Tottenham reject, basically, right? Now, we knew, or rather our scouts knew, that there was quality there, and that's why we went and got them, and sure enough, they've turned out to be stars. I think in the fullness of time, who knows what this boy from Liverpool could do? If he has a good 6 months, he could become the next Carter Vickers, because he's coming from a very similar situation, in a very good English team, but not getting a regular game, even though from what I hear from Liverpool fans, they rate him. Then you've got, I think Yang has the potential to be the next Jota. I think he's showing flashes of it now. And if he had a run of like 8 to 10 games in the team, he could be having the same impact that Jota had, potentially.
Yeah, I've liked what I've seen. I know that Jared speaks highly of Tilio. I've liked what I've seen with Young Home. I want to talk a wee bit about these players individually. But the first one I'm going to bring up is a comment in the comment section. I'm not seeing many of the lurkers in the comment section, Lawrence. It's very disappointing. If you do see them, call them out, please, because it makes my job a wee bit easier. I was getting stick last week because there was quite a few in last week, and it's difficult to keep an eye on them when we're having a conversation as well about Celtic. But JD comes in on the YouTube. If you want to make a comment, just subscribe to the channel. Afternoon all. How good was AJ? Great to see him in the side. What I want to talk about, guys, right, is were we written off last week? There's certainly a lot of people thought we weren't going to win that game. And I'm not just meaning Celtic fans. I just think overall in Scottish football, it was like lambs to the slaughter. You're going in there with a partnership that played one game of football together at the centre back position, and the Joe Hart maybe not having his best run of form, Greg Taylor maybe not having his best run of form, AJ coming back from injury. So yeah, I can understand the concerns. But if you come through a game like that, Lawrence, and you see Alistair Johnson crunching into tackles and with that big maniacal grin on his face when he does it, knowing that 50,000 fans are absolutely despising the look of him, and you've got a player in Scales who puts in the coming of age performance at Celtic, and you've got Lagerbielke who overcomes that initial adversity of thinking that he's sold the jerseys. It galvanises the team, Lawrence, doesn't it? It gives them a sense of belief. Anything that's been happening previously to that with regards to form, almost, time will tell, but it almost becomes insignificant. We've got through that. It galvanises the belief within this side that we can still win, and we can still win well, and we can win when it's backs to the wall stuff as well.
I think the jury, not just among Celtic fans, is probably still out on Brendan and what his teams could be. There's the camp's not happy. Will it be the same? I think Rangers had 1-1 in 13 against them. Now it's 1-1 in 14. I think maybe that's why they're so angry. They've realised, it's Brendan's back in. It's going to be normal service under Brendan. You're just going to lose. Doesn't matter, by putting a second string apart, you're going to lose. And, they had the advantage, 50,000 fans, no away fans. Since that's changed, you really need to take the points at home. And they couldn't ask for anything better. I think that's why they're also happy in the lead up to the game. They knew we were struggling. We'd have no one would pick that back line through choice, would they, from Celtic's squad? It's just down to injury. Hadn't scored for a couple of games. What was the midfield going well? Was Callum past that? Well, maybe all those things are true, but you still lost. And in truth, it could have been 3 or 4 if we'd taken our chances.
Exactly. But you make a point, Lawrence, right? Leading into this game, I've read a lot of that kind of stuff. And thankfully, on Acsom, I thought we were, I'm not going to say chilled. I'm never chilled going into a game like that. But we're, as balanced as you could possibly be when you're under the cosh with regards to the injury list, right? When you're under the cosh, when you're thinking, I wish we had signed a left back, I wish we had signed maybe a striker, a goalie, etc. So, yeah, going into that game, you had concerns. But I've seen loads of stuff leading into it, particularly on social media. And some people might say, well, why do you even pay attention to that? But people were going, Callum McGregor should be dropped. The captain of the football club, Brendan Rodgers, they're talking about him not having it and all this kind of stuff. And we were putting the message out there that certainly I disagreed with that. And I said that on a Wander Around Paradise last Monday. I completely disagreed with it. It's just this sticky little patch, a couple of games, and we'll get through it. Now, I take Mantis Toboggan MD's point. We are not well enough equipped for Champions League. One ugly win at Ibrox doesn't suddenly transform us into CL group stage contenders. Totally get that. And there are issues. I mean, even with regards to Scales, yesterday James French came on and spoke really well about Liam Scales. I don't think I was a massive critic. I just didn't think that he was going to be part of Brendan's plans from what I had seen. I thought it was just a matter of time before he went to Aberdeen, and that was where he was going to continue his career. He got a man of the match performance, but I'm not going to get carried away with that, Liam. I still think I can't wait for either Nat Phillips or No Rocky or Carter Vickers to come back, because Liam Scales, for me, going forward and going into the Champions League, isn't the answer. I mean, listen, he deserves every plaudit he got, but it's one game. It is one game. And we played that game with our backs against the wall, up against it, we got through it. But it doesn't mean, I think, he's going to stick around, he's going to be in the squad, but he's not a first, second, third choice centre-half.
No, but you know what, though? I liked Scales' comments after the game. First of all, I will hold my hands up and say, I used the phrase, I think it was in Celtic Down Under, actually, not here. Last week, I said that I didn't think Scales was Celtic class. And one of the commenters picked me up and said, well, define Celtic class, right? And I said, well, it's a very individual kind of, it's an individual perspective, right? But he went out there and did exactly what he had to do on Sunday and did it superbly well. Personally, for me, Joe Hart was man of the match. I thought Joe Hart just edged it, but Scales was excellent. Maeda was excellent. And whatever happens or doesn't happen in terms of Liam Scales' Celtic career going ahead, the boy can hold his head up high and say, you know what, I went to Ibrox and dominated them. Yeah. And that's something that I think every Celtic fan dreams of being able to tell their grandkids about, and he can do that now. And he should rightly be very, very proud.
Definitely. And this, Liam, it could result in him being a very useful squad player, a player that we're not thinking, we need to loan him out, we need to ship him off. Let's keep a hold of him. We know what we can do under pressure. I think I was critical of him after the St Johnstone game, because I did feel that there was 2 occasions where he failed to defend and he put us under pressure, and losing a goal at 75 minutes into that particular game is going to be very difficult for us to pull back the way we were playing. But when we're looking at how happy you are or otherwise, Lawrence, with the transfer window, one thing I didn't point out is the players we've kept. So I remember we spoke a lot last season about comments made by our former gaffer, Ange Postecoglou, where he said, don't get too attached with your heroes. We might lose a couple in the summer. And then we lost a couple of unexpected ones in Starfelt and Jota. And we know that Moy retired as well. But to keep a Bada and Carter Vickers and O'Reilly and Hatate and Kyogo, to keep these guys is massive. I'm not going to say it's gone under the radar, but we've got to also focus on the fact that we have kept a clutch of top quality players who you would expect to star, if anyone in the Celtic team is going to star for us in the Champions League.
Yeah, you've got to keep your best assets as much as you can. We're a selling club. If you get 25 million bid for Jota, we had to take it. But great that Brendan's went round and tied up guys that he sees that is key. Also, we've got rid of Yageti and Sorrell.
I know.
Haksabanovic, when he stepped out of line, it wasn't long going out on loan, was he? So there's been some work done in the background with the club in getting rid of these guys that, it's not before time, let's be honest. But yeah, I thought Maeda, people were saying, he doesn't look happy. He's chatting about watching a Spurs game. Jeez, what a performance. Unlucky not to have a goal or two. It's back to his best, wasn't he?
Well, this is another thing. Going into the game, you're hearing the stories about Maeda, and the fact that he's finding it difficult to adapt to a new style. He's watched the Spurs game. You're hearing Tati's unhappy. There's clubs sniffing about O'Reilly, but we came through that, and we've still got them all in the building. Like you say, anybody offers £25 million for any player in the Celtic squad, we're taking it. That's just the way it is. And Starfelt was a slightly different situation, one that Brendan Rodgers spoke about. But I think that there's individual players I would like to focus on. You mentioned Haksabanovic, for example, and he's been the subject of much discussion on Acsom, Liam. But I think what I find interesting about the whole situation is it might have escalated it, or it might have made the thing happen sooner than it would have done. Don't cross Brendan Rodgers. He spoke about how unhappy he was with Haksabanovic's comments on social media. So I think it's also, I'm not saying he's hung out to dry, but he's made an example of him.
Yeah, because I'd also think Haksabanovic has probably felt that way for a while. That he didn't dare say it under Ange, because he knew Ange would say, well, fine then, son, cheerio.
Yep.
And he maybe thought he could chance his arm with the new manager just been in the door and maybe not having the camaraderie with the squad yet to come out and take that kind of authority. But no, Brendan Rodgers just been right, son, get to, I have my issues with Brendan Rodgers, but I do think he handled that absolutely superbly. And it's a shame for Haksabanovic, because I think there's a player there, I really do, but doesn't fit with the system Celtic played either under Ange or at the moment under Rodgers. And he's a guy that obviously gets frustrated when he's not playing, but going and having tantrums on social media is not how you get a game. It's how you get yourself sent to Stoke. So that's gonna become a catchphrase, isn't it? You don't wind your neck in, son, you'll be sent to Stoke.
That's it. Yeah, that's absolutely. But the thing is, Liam, it's true what you say. He's got the natural ability. He's got the natural gift of football ability, but that's not enough. Certainly not in the modern game.
The other thing which you raised there, which I just briefly want to touch on, see the Maeda thing about him being unhappy, right? I'm trying to think of a word I can use here without swearing. Complete and utter BS, right? It was classic Daily Record or the Sun, can't remember which one it was, taking a Japanese news article and running it through Google Translate and not bothering to apply any sort of context or any actual translator, right? Maeda did not say at any point he was unhappy, right? He said, and I quote, because I've read the original article in its original language with a wee bit of help from my wife. It said, it's always a challenge when a new manager comes in and you have to impress him all over again. Mm-hmm. He was speaking generally about the whole team are going to be a wee bit unsettled now because there's a new manager in the door and all bets are off. That's the same at the start of any new season under a new manager. So Maeda was just reflecting what the whole squad's probably feeling at that point. And he also talked about the Spurs game. All he said was he watched one Spurs game and he enjoyed it because it reminded him of how Celtic played last season.
And so he was
he was simply paying a compliment to his former manager. That's all it was.
And by the time we get that translated, Liam, it's a completely different story. But you know what? They should come to you. They should come to you for these stories, Listen,
as usual, the Scottish media put 2 and 2 together and come up with 1690,
Barry Lavery. If Carlsberg did meltdowns, this is a very impressive meltdown, Paddy, I've got to say. And I've got to admit, right, for whatever reason, some people like to tune into Rangers shows and all that. I don't do it. I actually don't. Sometimes you'll see something popping up on your Twitter feed, for example, because it's been clipped and all that. I don't tend to do that. But in terms of the meltdown, it's been unavoidable. It's right there. They're demanding reform from the SFA, etc., etc. Another point I've got to make in terms of giving the club a bit of credit is that I'm pretty sure we were in for several players that we didn't get the deals done, because I know that Matthias Kvitsgarden, the Brøndby striker, he's spoken about Celtic's interest, and I think the club knocked the offer back. Again, you might be of the view, give them an extra 1.5, 2 million, get the player in. We didn't do that, but I'm sure there were a few players that we were pursuing. Will we go back to them in January? Perhaps we will. I'm going to bring up Paul McQuaid's comment here. Now that the dust has settled, our coaching staff need to work hard to get team shape and movement patterns reinforced. We only have one league game before Feyenoord. Lawrence, I mean, I'm not saying it's scary, but yeah, in terms of getting everything ready for that big match in Rotterdam, there isn't much you can do. I mean, it's going to be a fragmented squad with the international break, and then you've got one game against Dundee to get it right.
I think getting people back from injury is going to help us, isn't it? Having that break.
Hatate will be back, won't he? After the international break, Hatate will be back, yeah.
Which should be huge. Obviously, Kobayashi was back. How big a part of the play, I don't know. So I think just giving the players, they've got to have taken belief from Ibrox, haven't they? Those that hadn't bought it, Brendan will surely bought it now and saying, right, you know what? We went out with their way of game plan. At what? Brendan's able to say, well, they've got 1-1 and 14 against me. What do you expect? So, yeah, we'll be working hard, getting ready for Feyenoord. So the league match is getting 3 points, because let's be honest, the previous two games weren't great leading up to Ibrox. So you want to get back into, maybe scoring 2 or 3 before Feyenoord, getting the strikers back in form, or having another couple of weeks layoff, get his fitness up. I think it'll be great. He looked okay. There's a couple of chances he could have done better with, but yeah, having an option up top will be good. So yeah, but Brendan knows what's ahead of him. He's got the squad that he's got for until January, so he knows what he's got to work with, and he's a track record of improving players. He knows what he's doing. It's just saying, right, this is what I've got. I mean, it's not like Brendan's not the kind of guy that's going to buy strikers that maybe 5 goals in 5 seasons or something and pin his hat on them. He knows football, doesn't he? He knows what it takes to put a winning team in the park, and he'll be able to do that with the squad settled in Scotland. The big hope for everybody was progress in Europe, and I think that's why we're disappointed at the transfer window. As much as a lot of players, we've not seen enough in to judge them that have come in. There's a couple of positions that, highlighted left back and goalkeeper, we all thought we're going to need strength in there. No, they haven't. But yeah, we'll see what it brings.
We will. There's a few elements to this as well, Lawrence, in terms of the way that Brendan Rodgers can improve and develop players. He can give them a new lease of life. We know that. He's done it wherever he has gone. It looks as though he's done it with a few players already at Celtic. You've then got the injured players coming back in. And then the third element, I think, as well, is the unknown quantity or quality of some of the guys we've brought in. So, there's going to be players who will, over the next weeks and months, improve and come to the fore that maybe we weren't even expecting as well. Now, it was great to see Liam. Fergus McCann at the game at the weekend. He had been at the Celtic Story, the gala opening of the Celtic Story in Glasgow. He's obviously stayed for the game. It was fantastic to see him at the match.
Aye. Celtic, get your act together and get a statue of wee Fergus while he's still around to see it. Get it done. That man he deserves every form of acknowledgement and gratitude that we as a club can give him, because what a job he did saving our club, and not just saving our club, but kind of ushering in a new sort of, how can I put this, a new sense of our own place of where we are, because up until he came in, not only were we mince on the park and financially heading down the toilet, but we'd kind of accepted that the authorities would walk all over us, that Rangers would come out and, set out to injure our players, etc., with immunity. The SFA just would never give us the time of day. And Fergus basically put his foot down and said, Not on my watch. None of that's going to happen anymore. He put in place the idea of like, no, we're not taking this anymore. We're Celtic. We're the biggest team in the country. We'll call the shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that continued when, later on when you had Peter Lawwell, Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, right up to Ange. This idea of take no prisoners when you've got the Scottish media and the Scottish establishment to deal with. And it started with wee Fergus. And
He stood up.
It's
You're
something
right.
that needs to be acknowledged. And I think everybody, every single body, every person in the world who loves Celtic owes that man a pint.
You know this, Liam, there's 2 points to what you're saying there that I want to pick up on. The first one, obviously we do our wander round paradise. And over the last couple of weeks, I've been joined by a buddy. And next week will be no different, top secret, who it's going to be. But you imagine, right, that person I was walking around Celtic Park, not for the video, but just in general, maybe had a visit from somebody from another country who wasn't born into supporting Celtic, and you wanted to introduce them to Celtic Football Club. So you go up to the stadium, you park your car, and you take a wee walk up the Celtic way. So the first thing you would explain to them is obviously the guy holding a big cup is Billy McNeil. You know, it's there. It's a lasting reminder. You walk up the Celtic way. There's various banners as you go up there. Then you've got the statues, of course, of Jock Stein, Jimmy Johnstone, Brother Wilfred. You could talk a wee bit about these massive figures in the history of Celtic Football Club. The star above the entrance, you could explain this. There's a plaque, a Tommy Burns plaque to the left of the entrance as well. You could tell them about that. You then walk all the way around the stadium. Now, there are obviously some fascia decorative signage and signs up at the moment. Not a great deal of history on them, it's got to be said. There's one of Billy McNeil. I think Callum McGregor appears on one of them. Not a massive amount of history, it's got to be said. And you go all the way around the stadium, and then, you know, on the wall, on the other side of the park, obviously there's a commemorative Celtic Graves plaque for the original Celtic Park, which obviously was the Celtic Graves that organised. By the time you come right round, you know, you could be forgiven for not knowing who Fergus McCann is, because there's nothing. There's the Jock Stein stand, there's the Lisbon Lions stand, there's all these different, you know, statues that I've spoken about, some plaques. There's so much scope for that, Liam. There's so much scope. And I know Fergus McCann from talking to people who know him really well over the years, one being David Lowe, for example. I don't think Fergus would thank you or expect anything like that. But in terms of the club embracing our history, you know, I've been saying it for weeks. That's the type of thing, Liam, that we could dedicate a space around the stadium for figures like him. And there's other figures, but I actually think he's he's in the top three for me. I've always said that, you know, in terms of importance, because he saved the club. Now, if we take that a stage further, you're talking about standing up against the establishment. You said the authorities would walk all over us. I want to use that as a link, actually, into a wee conversation that we had about jerseys. You two guys are wearing the Celtic jersey at the moment. And obviously, I've done a huge amount of research into the jersey. You find wee interesting things, like, for example, the star above the badge. That's like an Italian tradition, isn't it? Italian football, you know, they've had stars for years. And it was a fans forum that resulted in a supporter suggesting that there should be a star above the Celtic crest. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Under Martin O'Neill is when that happened. So there's all these different things you learn about. But we launched the Hoops, beautiful 120 years of the Hoops jersey just last week. Absolutely stunning, available for pre-order and all that kind of stuff. And it is the quintessential Celtic jersey of the modern age, Lawrence, because we know you've got to have the manufacturer's logo on it, but they've done it white on white. You've got to have your crest white on white, etc. So we know all that, but it's beautiful, right? But it got me thinking about the kit that we didn't wear last year, which is the Origins kit. And it was launched, obviously, for St. Patrick's Day, the weekend, and we played Hibs on the 18th in the league. And I just felt at that time it was perfect, because it was, you know, it was 2 months before the 70th anniversary, Lawrence, of the Coronation Cup final victory of 1953, which, you know, again, very fond of that victory because of the Neely Mockin connection he scored in the final, didn't he, against Hibs. And it was almost felt at the time that Hibs and Celtic had gate-crashed the coronation party, because we were the anti-establishment. We were the Irish football teams in Scotland, you know, with the Irish heritage. And we had kind of like against all the odds, got to the final and Celtic won it. So you had all that happening. And at the time last year, in fact, it was this year, in March this year, we were only a couple of months away from another coronation. Now, I thought and I expected, Lawrence, that when Celtic took to the field against Hibs, we would be wearing the Origins kit. The one that harked back to our Irish heritage. Why do we know why that didn't happen?
I think everybody expected it, didn't they? I don't know. Did anyone have? I mean, there was no one in the Celtic support, had a problem with the kit. Can't see anyone from Celtic
hugely popular.
No, wouldn't see anyone from Celtic vetoing the use of that kit. I'm not too sure why anyone else would veto it. No, what reasons they could come up with, but I'm pretty sure the sponsor would like to have seen it worn. Might increase sales. Strange one altogether. Cracking top, isn't it? Celebrating, our origins.
Stunning top.
I don't know anyone in Scotland would, have anything against Celtics celebrating their Irish origins. I mean, that would surely not.
It makes me wonder, Lawrence, because last season, obviously, we had that kit. We all expected us to be wearing it. It was very, very popular. I spoke to the guys in the superstore saying, you can't get it for love nor money. It's a cracking jersey, very popular amongst the Celtic fans. It was launched, in actual fact, in Ireland. When we did the photo shoot and all that, that was over in Ireland. However, we didn't wear it. Is there a situation, perhaps, Liam, that we have asked for permission? Because you need permission. It needs to be stamped, approved and all this kind of stuff to register that jersey, and it's been knocked back. Because if that was the case, that would be preposterous, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I can only speculate. But based on what I have heard, and going on my journalistic instinct, if I hear the same story from multiple unconnected sources, I tend to think there's probably something to it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard that some people said because of the quote-unquote Irishness of the shirt, it was politically problematic. Now, you and I we all know that's nonsense. But in the west of Scotland, I am not surprised to hear that might have been brought up.
That almost sounds like racism.
Well, yeah. Although, credit to our rivals, they did bring out a homage to the Swiss Guard in their away strip this season. So they're doing their bit to fight bigotry. Give them credit when it's due.
I thought it was a
between that and their papal purple away shirt from last season, Rangers are doing their bit. Give them credit.
Well, I find it astonishing if that was the case, Liam, because I think you look at Ibrox here at the weekend when we beat them 1-0, and it was exclusive to Rangers fans. But when you looked around the crowd, the jerseys that stood out more than any were the orange jerseys, and you think to yourself, well, the colour orange has never really been an official colour of Rangers Football Club. So obviously we know the reasons why that has been embraced by the club and it's been pushed by the club with regards to goalkeeper jerseys, training kit, away jerseys, etc. So if Celtic were unable or refused permission to wear the Irish Origins jersey, it would be great to know if that was the case, and it would be preposterous if it was the case. And it wouldn't surprise me.
This winds back to what we talked about a minute ago, because do you know what? 20 years ago, if Fergus would have said to hell with them, we're wearing it anyway.
Mm.
And then...
Like he did with the numbers.
Aye. If they've got an issue with it, let's have it out in the open, and let's just hear exactly what your problem is with us wearing an Irish kit.
Yeah. I would like to find out more. If you've got any information, let me know in the comment section. I really would like to dig deep in this one because it was a surprise at the time. But then if it comes to light that we did apply to use it, I'm interested in jerseys. It's all about research, of course. I might have to write an update for my book at some point, and I would like to include this in it. I want to talk about game changers, Lawrence, and Kyogo scored. There's so many iconic moments in Kyogo's Celtic career, isn't there? I mean, celebrations, the goals that he scores. And he added to that at the weekend. He had 3 chances at the weekend. He scored 1. He was the game changer. He was the match winner. And there's been all this talk about, but can he do it at Champions League level? I think this season he's going to prove that he can do it. I'm not happy going into this group with 2 out-and-out strikers. I know Maeda can play there. I know Abada can play there. Rocco Vata can play there. Whether or not he's going to be in the squad, I don't know. I'm not happy with the dirty strikers we're going to have in the squad. But Kyogo again, nailed the fact that he is the match winner for Celtic. And when he plays on the shoulder of the last defender, he's so much more effective, Lawrence. I know that he's been coming deep. What did you make of his performance, his strike, and the aftermath of that? Because all the discussion's been around he's the best striker we've had since Larsson.
So I think it looked a wee bit like, remember Lustig dropped one into him at Hampden and he finished it. Very reminiscent of that goal. Cracking strike by him. All right performance, it's improved in the last few games. Liam said last season, I think early on last season, it'd be Celtic's best striker from Larsson. And I'm saying, there's a few other strikers in there that I'd rate ahead of him, but, Kyogo's got time on his side. And the longer he stays here, he's just enhancing his reputation. He seems to be improving, month on month with us. Can he do it in the Champions League? I think he will. I think he's definitely got quality. That was a top draw goal. It doesn't matter who hits that. To take it that early on the volley, there's not many strikers out there that can do that and put it in the bottom corner. So, yeah, brilliant goal from him. Yeah, 3 chances. He that way back heel flick. He could have maybe cut Maeda in for one, but he's got the goal that brought the 3 points home. That's what you want from your striker, isn't it? He's went out there, he's done his job, he's done it with some style. Should have had a penalty. Yeah. He's still got. Let's hope we've still got years of Kyogo with us. Will he make up? Will there be 7 years of Kyogo? Will Kevin Graham be writing a book in a few years' time? Let's hope so. Will he put in danger Larsson's goal scoring records? Hopefully.
I'm not so sure about that, but if Kevin Graham does write a poetry book on Kyogo, we're going to have to get Liam to do a Japanese translation of that and take it international. He's a player, Liam, that you were well aware of prior to him signing for Celtic. I mean, this is season number 3. First hampered a wee bit by injury. Second, 30-odd goals. I think, was it 34 goals he scored last season? I certainly think he could better that. I mean, in terms of him being managed by Brendan Rodgers in a slightly different way, what have you made of his season and obviously the performance at the weekend by Kyogo?
Well, before we get into Kyogo, I should just state for the record that, poetry is not my thing. I thought a haiku was a farm animal that smoked weed. But anyway, I'm here all week. Look, it's funny that we talk about Larsson because to me, Kyogo's performance at the weekend was very reminiscent of quite a few games that Larsson had for Celtic down the years. You would see games where Larsson would be trying things and it might not be happening for him. He might not be having his best game. And then just one moment of genius and suddenly he wins the match for you. And that was Kyogo on Sunday. He was, he tried that wee flick that didn't quite come off. He had a couple of half chances and didn't really make full use of them. And, he gets that one ball over the top, sees the goal and just fires it right into the net first time. And it is the sort of thing Larsson used to do. I remember when I had my season ticket, it was really funny. One of the classic all-time stupid comments you hear at the football. Larsson's not having a great game, right? Ends up scoring 2 goals in the last 10 minutes, but he's not having a great game. And he scores the first goal, and this guy behind me went, "Aye, Larsson, you're good for scoring goals."
What reminded me of that?
Exactly, do you want your striker to do?
I know the bend it, the bend it like Bratback play that Jim does. There's a few moments in there that really remind you of the attitude around Larsson when he first came in, and obviously we know how that turned out as well. What I love about Larsson is that his first and last goals at Celtic Park. What I love about it, it's an interesting wee pub fact. His first and last goals at Celtic Park were against Celtic. So you can figure that one out. His first and his last goals as a footballer were against Celtic, interestingly enough. Listen, loads of really, really good comments coming in. And Fergus did release, says B, a tricolour kit, the white one. Yeah, he did. The jazzy one that we wore as a third kit at Hampden a few times. Obviously, one green sleeve, one yellow sleeve, and white down the middle. He did that. And also, we've got
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we only wore that for one match.
I remember us wearing it against
Aberdeen. You can look up later on. Yep,
yeah,
I think
we wore it against Aberdeen.
We were planning to wear it in a few games, but the way things worked out, I think we only ever wore it for one match.
Maybe Fergus didn't get permission and he only wore it the once. The black Tenants kit was more Irish looking, and we wore that. Yeah, with the tricolour clubs, we wore that in a cup final as well, says Young Bats. Absolutely. No, I want to know more about this this story that both Liam and I and a few of others have heard about in relation to us getting knocked back with that kit. I want to know more, obviously, for research purposes. One player who did wear that black kit you're talking about, actually, was Charlie Mulgrew. And Charlie has announced his retirement. This is something, Lawrence, that he was talking to us about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we did an Acsom live gig at Don Max, and Charlie was there. Charlie was brilliant. And he was talking about the fact that at that point he had one offer, didn't he? One playing offer. He wasn't sure what he was going to do with it. Listen, I'm surmising here. Maybe it was with Fleetwood. Maybe he was going to go down to Brunei and play with Brunei down at Fleetwood, and that's all off the table because Brunei lost the job down there. But Charlie Mulgrew has retired. You look at him, over 200 games for the club, 41 goals, 21 assists. You can talk about that. You can talk about his honours. But I tend to think about Charlie Mulgrew in the sense of the 9-in-a-row era started, obviously, with Neil Lennon. And Neil Lennon's first season, first signing rather, Lawrence, was Charlie Mulgrew, and he won 5 in a row, 5 leagues in a row. So he was part of that team that got that 9-in-a-row era started, and I think we should always remember him for that. Some amazing victories that he was involved in. He flighted the ball over for Wanyama against Barcelona. The 2 games at Rugby Park, the 3 each game, when we're 3-0 down. I thought Mulgrew was unbelievable. Yep. He was a warrior in that game in the second half, and then the other fixture later on in the season at Rugby Park where we win the league and it's 6-0. Mulgrew was outstanding in that game as well. So what's your memories of Big Charlie?
Oh, he's just coming through then. Was it Lee Naylor? Danny Fox?
Yeah, Lee Naylor, Wolves. It was Lee Naylor. Yeah.
Naylor Wolves, then he went to Holland, then he came back, and then he returned and became a mainstay of a really successful Celtic team. Decent free kick on him. I think he proved, he was a better player than a lot of people gave him credit for. He played a variety of positions for us. He was just an absolute warrior for us. Gave everything, Celtic to the core. Still, I think Michelle Moan was it that had problems with him, his childcare arrangements, but I'm not sure. But
that's right. He made a joke about that recently, didn't he? He made a joke about that when he was on punditry duty recently. Did you see it? No. Right, aye. Well, anyway, there's a meme kicking about. Yeah, Joseph McGonigal, 3-3 draw, or 3-0 doing against Kilmarnock. Absolutely. Yeah, he's had a few one-liners in his time as well. He's raging. There was a few actually from Charlie Mulgrew. You made that up, he says. Remember?
Yeah, you've made that up. He's raging. You've just made that up. 2 minutes before Mali goes off, someone's at the door.
Oh, no problem. Mulgrew versus Lafferty. I spoke to him about that as well in relation to that incident that got him a red card when he was at Aberdeen. But yeah, Charlie Mulgrew, I think his plan, Liam, is to continue in football. He's obviously got a wee gig as a pundit, and I think he's pretty good at that. But I think he wants to get into the coaching. He's got his. I was talking to him about his badges. He's got his badges, and I think one of his kids actually is a promising player, possibly at Celtic as well. Maybe 15, 16-year-old player as well. But Charlie Mulgrew, yeah, I tend to remember him as being part of that team that set the ball rolling, and he won 5 of the 9 in a row.
Yeah. I remember him as one of those guys who was always a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week. He wouldn't often get man of the match, but he was always part of the conversation. You cannot fault his effort, his ingenuity, and his versatility. He played a variety of roles for us. Lawrence talked about his free kicks and his shooting ability. We think of him as a defender, but he had pretty good. He was pretty good going forward as well. He's a guy who now I don't know what he's got planned next, and whatever it is, I wish him nothing but the best. But I hope if there's any sort of role at Celtic in the backroom available, get Charlie Mulgrew in there. A guy like that working with young players, with his experience, his dynamic, as I said, versatility, and also his kind of, let's just say, his rather robust approach to taking on certain opponents. I think it's something that would benefit any team, but would especially benefit the Celtic youth team or the Celtic B team.
You know this, right, Liam? I did speak about the fact that he had been at Celtic since I think he was 8. You know what I mean? And he came all the way through the ranks. And just as it looked as though he was going to be involved in Gordon Strachan's first team plans, Dan Cahill asked the question, did we let him go too soon? There was a whole story around that. So he did tell the story that he was involved in the 2 testimonial games, Roy Keane and Alan Shearer, full houses at Old Trafford and St James's. He started the second game, albeit a Celtic fan chose the team. I didn't know this, but a Celtic fan chose the team that night. Charlie Mulgrew played, and it looked as though he was going to be part of the squad. They then go on a pre-season tour of, was it Poland, Lawrence, I think? And he's turned up late for the team coach after, obviously, for one of the games. Him and his pal, Aidan McGeady, they had come through at the same time, same age, of course. And they got a hefty fine from Strack for being late. And obviously, he was bounced out on loan, Dundee United. And then he was part of the Wolves deal that brought Lee Naylor to the club. So, yeah, I probably think he did.
Didn't he?
He done well, yeah. Yeah,
done well. Young player of the month a couple of times.
But so again,
high hopes for him.
The thing is, though, Lauren, sometimes you need that wee bit of adversity early in your career to come back stronger. And I think taking up the point that Liam makes about him being involved in the club, the one thing I love about him is the fact that, you know, he's come through the academy, he's come through the ranks, but he's obviously looked after himself in so far as the fact that he's 37-year-old retiring as a footballer. He's not one of these guys in his early 30s that's chucked it 3 years before he should have and all this. He has maximised his career. And I think that's so important when you're dealing with youth footballers coming through at Celtic, to maximise your career. Now, I want to talk about supporters buses with you guys as well before we wrap it up today. But before I do that, I was made aware this morning of Danny Tonner, who is he's a Greenock father of 2. He's 31 years of age, and he's suffering from MND. Now, I don't know about you guys. I'd never been affected by MND or any members of my family, so I wasn't aware really of what it entailed until the story of wee Jinky, and when obviously wee Jinky was hit with it as well. But all his mates are doing an incredible mountain climbing challenge to raise funds for Danny. Danny was a very active restaurateur. I mean, he's been hit with this at such a young age, only 31 years of age. Horrendous affliction. But his mates are coming together to raise some much needed funds for him. So check out that story. You'll find it online and support it if you possibly can. Supporters buses, Lawrence. Because I don't live in Glasgow and never have done, a massive part of my Celtic supporting life has been on Fife supporters buses. And I was reading, I say with interest, with disgust, that there is a proposal in place that basically, Lawrence, is going to make life difficult for fans to travel to away games. Not even away games, home games, if you're like myself, or, you know, travelling to the game from outside of Glasgow. And I think it's a stark reminder that the Tories are no friend of the working classes. I mean, how on earth could that be workable?
I think there's a scourge across Scotland of supporter buses dropping people off that have maybe missed their bus or need a lift, or maybe picking them up, pulling into pubs and restaurants and having a few pints, stuff like that. No wonder they're out to stop it, eh? The absolute carnage of supporters buses. They're going to stop buses dropping people off unless they've got prior agreement to do so by the police. You know,
it's incredible.
Exactly what's the problem with the bus? Pick somebody up and say, listen, you've missed your bus, jump on here, we'll drop you off on the way home. you know, you're like, nah, that can't be happening now. Need agreement for the police to do that.
Unbelievable. What about the economy? Economically.
10 miles to the ground.
Yeah.
You know, what? You can't stop within 10 miles of the ground. Why? You know, what's the issue of them? I don't know. Pulling into Chapman's Bar or Caesars or something. Let's go to Caesars, get a few pints before the game, jump back on the bus, and we'll be at the ground in time. I think part of it, you know, they need to have left the stadium an hour after the event's finished. Good luck with that, Celtic Park some nights. you know, you just wonder, for what reason have they come up for this? You know, exactly what problem are they looking to solve here? it's just absolutely crazy. And name and addresses of people that have organised the buses have to be passed to the police.
Difficult
You know,
enough. Yeah,
you're
it's
going on a
difficult
list.
enough.
You organised a supporters bus.
Yep.
You must go on a list.
The thing is, yeah, exactly. And there you go straight away. You're an item of intelligence if that's the case. But the proposals include buses can't stop anywhere within 10 miles of the ground without police permission. Buses can't stop at any pub for a beer unless it's sold with a substantial meal. Buses are to arrive at the venue no earlier than 2 hours before and not later than 1 hour before the scheduled start of the game, unless otherwise directed by police. Buses can't drop off or pick up any fans at any unauthorised locations, Lawrence. This is the one you're going on about, without prior permission of the police. They're just to wave at them as they drive past them. Bus companies must tell dedicated football officer 48 hours before the game the number of supporters expected to travel, the number of vehicles booked, the name and contact number for the person who made the booking. Liam, this is scandalous that they are possibly trying to get this through. And you think to yourself, the effect that it would have on the clubs, the supporters clubs, the bus companies, the economy, the football clubs. Why are they targeting travelling football fans?
It's all about control. Simple as that. You know, the toffs in the government do not like us uppity working class folk having a good time. It's that simple. They want us to work, pay our taxes, then die. They don't want anything else from us. How dare we have any fun? You know, the interesting thing is, I thought about this. I'd read murmurings about all this a couple of months ago, but I didn't think for a second it would actually happen because I thought it's insane. But you know, here we are. And I went to the 2 games in Japan, with one with my wife and one with my pal who lives down near Osaka. And I counted the number of occasions where, if I'd been going to the game in Scotland and behaving the same way, I could have been arrested about 2 or 3 dozen times. Things like drinking in the stadium, drinking within a mile of the stadium, deviating from my planned route to the stadium because I wanted to have a pint, bringing my own food with me onto the train before we went to the stadium. It's just, you know, as I said, I mean, I wrote, you may remember, I wrote a piece for the Acsom blog about this. I said Celtic fans are going to be amazed at how hospitable the stadium is in Japan, when really this should be the norm for football fans everywhere. Yeah, football is an entertainment. It's an entertainment industry first, and it's a sport second. That's the unfortunate reality of the capitalist society we live in, right? This is not just politically stupid, and it's not just damaging to the morale of the working man. It's, even if you're an absolute staunch capitalist, it does not make sense economically either, because the amount of money that is going to be drained out of the whole sort of football match day industry, because buses won't be able to go to pubs, so more pubs will close. Bus companies could go under because they're not going to get as much custom from, because Celtic fans will just go to games individually, because, well, to hell with giving the police my name and address. I've seen how they harass the Green Brigade and whatever. You know, I mean, put it this way, right? I've lived in Japan for close to 20 years, never broken any laws to the best of my knowledge. But you better believe the British Embassy do not have my name and address. Right? I don't want any British government entity monitoring me, because I do not trust them for a second. No. And this is exactly why I don't register with them.
It's a control of information.
We should all resist this as much as we can.
Yeah, you've got to resist it.
They don't like it when we get together as a group.
No.
That's it. They don't want us to get organised. Don't let them get together and talk. Don't let them get organised. No. Yeah. Let's split them up and keep control.
I talked about this with my wife last night, because we were talking, just slightly tangential here, but you've probably read about the issue of radioactive waste getting released into the water off Japan at the moment. There's a big kick up about it. Everybody's very unhappy about it. And she said, how can governments do this? How can they just ignore what people want and just do what they want? And I said, well, watch NHK, the equivalent of BBC over here, right? It's all pro-government stance. Nobody's questioning it. And it's not about money. It's not about anything. It's about who controls the information. Government controls the information. They control the society. And this is a very sinister facet of that. They want as much information on working class football fans as possible. Not just Celtic fans. This is a threat to everybody. Because they want to control us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
information is power and power is control. And it needs to be resisted.
It does. It needs to be resisted. I think that Celtic fan bases, the affiliation, the association, there needs to be a coming together to resist this proposal, because it is preposterous to think that they are trying to implement this into a sport that punches way above its weight in terms of the support. Lawrence, when you think about it, rather than celebrate the fact that Scottish football has no right to have such a, highly supported league as we do. And they try and put things in place to affect that negatively. Listen, I know it's a wee bit political, but football and politics goes hand in hand. What's your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section. 1,400 strong at the peak across a number of different platforms, mainly on YouTube. Thanks everybody for getting involved there. If you want to make a comment, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel, and you can do that for us as well. It's been an absolute pleasure, and all that's left for me to say, Liam Carrigan, Lawrence Conley, thank you for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.